Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds! Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Haha! Welcome, Katy and Sheri. I'm super excited to learn more about this Purple Bridges thing for folks who aren't familiar with you individually. Why don't we just start off with a quick introduction to who you are, a little bit of your background, and then we'll jump into the Purple Bridges project.
Sure, sounds like a plan. I'll start. So many of your viewers might already know who I am. I wanted to talk a little bit more today, though, about my background professionally, because that's actually what led me to find Andrew Yang and led me to the campaign trail, which segues into what I'm working on right now with Sheri. So I have always been civically minded. I am now working on a 7-year career, going on 7 years, working UX in the government. I've supported federal clients from U.S. immigration to the DoD to FEMA. Right now I'm working nuclear defense remotely from California. So I basically decided to follow Andrew Yang in March of 2019 when I saw that he was the only candidate on what I saw my screen at the time that was talking about comprehensive solutions to problems. He had over 150 policies listed on his website at the time, and all of those policies seemed to be humanity first. And that's very important for a UXer. So as someone who's had a UX career in government, my primary focus has been to change the government culture and to ensure that government agencies provide vital services to citizens and immigrants. Innovation in local government is often thought of in terms of efficiency and cost savings, but it leaves out a really important focus, which really is how residents experience government programs, services, new policy changes. In the government, we need human-centered design practices and principles to develop a widely accessible civic technologies. And a lot of those technologies are legacy projects that are being transformed over time. It's very, very important that these services are accessible to the public. So I'm driven by these motivations, and I've worked on solutions to the very problems Andrew Yang has outlined in some of his policies on his website. The proof is in the pudding. To see change that you want to see, you need to work for it. That's what activated me on the campaign trail. I actually started my activism in DC. The first thing I did was I was handing out War on Normal People books when I met Rev Wendy at the Capitol. I was a host for many of the Yang Gang events at local bars and happy hours in DC. I was very much a physical volunteer. And so I realized quickly that my best skill sets are in tech, and the Yang Gang was coming together online, that I could be potentially more powerful doing some of the digital volunteerism. The first way we actually interact with the campaign is my partner and I, we rebuilt a texting platform and sent it to the campaign for free because we wanted to help out so badly. And he ended up becoming the data director of the campaign, and I ended up segueing into the volunteer path. So we had a very interesting dynamic of tackling, helping the problems for the campaign from both of those perspectives. I ultimately used Twitter to start in about 3 weeks' time. I decided to do this in December of last year, Sorority of Yang. And within 3 weeks, we raised $40,000, and we activated over 60 people just via Twitter, bringing people into Twitter DM groups. So I have a lot of experience of using social media and activating people online to bring them into the real world to volunteer. Post Yang dropping out, we could have never expected or anticipated what has happened in the world. With post-COVID, we can't go outside. If you live in California, the wildfires, the riots, the environment is so different and not what we expect it to be. So a lot of us who want to continue our volunteerism, we can't do it in the traditional sense that we were used to on the trail. We have to pretty much fully rely on digital technology to extend our volunteerism into the next phase. And what does that look like? Without Yang, spearheading our movement because he dropped out, we now have to rely on ourselves to continue our work of hopefully promoting the same values of the campaign, which is math and humanity first. And it's very divisive online right now. So it's very difficult to navigate that environment. Thinking about that and navigating that difficult environment, that's when I met Sheri. And I met Sheri through a mutual contact in DC, and I heard about her project. And she has a very diverse background from a lot of us in the Yang Gang. She is a Disney exec, furloughed now from Disney. I think talent acquisition, right, Sheri? She is very, very positive, and she has the same message that we've all been talking about on the campaign, the humanity first, let's reach solutions in a bipartisan way. So that message really resonated with me. So I was just like, sign me up. And I have a lot of skill sets in the tech area. So I think my skills will really complement the beginning of her startup to this nonprofit. So I hope that segues into her introduction and a little bit more about me, or like why you actually met me in Sorority of Yang. This is just a continuation of the stream of work I've always been passionate about. So.
Thank you, Katy. So you were clearly, for those who don't know, you were deep into Yang 2020 volunteering and now shifting gears and working with Sheri on Purple Bridges. Sheri, tell us a little bit about yourself. Are you also hardcore Yang Gang or more just omnivorous?
I very, very much appreciate the values that Yang brought to the table during the campaign, and they are very close to what we're trying to do with Purple Bridges, to look at things from an analytical perspective and to look at things that are, we wonder, do we have to be red or blue? Why do we have to choose red or blue when with the right dialogue and analysis, we can come to the right conclusions about a lot of different things that make us more purple. My background, the diversity of our team is so great because my background is completely different. As Katy said, I've spent the last 30 years in corporate America working for the largest entertainment company, we like to say, on the planet. And my background is with entertainment. And I have brought, as I grew through my management for 30 years at Disney, I had an opportunity to get into more strategic planning and management and leadership skills throughout my years, along with all of that creative stuff that is kind of innately part of who I am. And so this moment in time just feels like the absolute perfect moment in history for me to take all of my creative leadership, strategic planning skills and marry them with people like Katy and the others on our great team, our very small, great team, to build something that is very, very special, and that I think that the future generations are going to look at us and say, did we rise to this occasion? And I think we're doing whatever we can to rise to that occasion. I started working when I was 14 years old, and I've always been a very, very purpose-driven leader and person. And when I found myself on furlough, I had actually thought of this project and this organization a couple of years ago, about a year and a half ago. And I was still very much involved in my full-time work and had to put it on the back burner. But at that time, I was really concerned with the way people are talking to each other and the way I saw us going either online or even in family and friend groups. So my story is a little bit different if you listen a little bit to how we got here. I have two brothers, and we all three went to different colleges, but But one of my brothers went to a rival college, like really big rival. And when we always got together, we would wear our shirts and our colors and our team mascots proudly. And we also when we got together, we also were on completely opposite ends of the political spectrum. And so I'm not much of a shrinking violet, neither is he. So when we got together, you can imagine the debates were great about our schools and our politics. And at the end of the day, you know, whenever we had big debates, we still knew that we were family. And at the end of the day, we would hug and love each other, and it was okay. And I don't see that happening in our world right now. You know, we're a little bit more tribal. I guess fear is making us more tribal in our beliefs, and we're in our school colors, if you will. We're really hanging on to those. But I really feel like we're one American family, and we just need to continue to work towards being that one American family. You know, my brother passed away about a year and a half ago from pancreatic cancer. And we picked the name for Purple Bridges because red and blue make purple, right? And we want to come together for purple. But I was talking to my sister-in-law, and she reminded me that the ribbon you wear for pancreatic cancer is also purple. So I feel like this is really, I'm very driven, I'm very passionate to make this the work that I do from now on. And I'm very excited about the team. I'm hoping that your listeners feel the same way we do about the world and have a lot of experience on the trail and with the passion of fighting for something that we all know is right. I'm hoping that we can inspire them to join us and continue to expand this really diverse team.
Well, thank you for sharing, and so sorry to hear about your brother, Sheri. Clearly you had a deep relationship, and he left too soon. I'm glad that you're channeling some of that energy, you know, into this project, and hopefully helping make a big impact on the country. One thing that I struggle with is, you know, your analogy about kind of rival sports teams. You know, it does remind me of, like, there was a time when Republicans and Democrats would be like, oh, my Democrat friend over here. Oh, yo, my Republican friend. Like now you wouldn't even go to the same party with a bunch of blanks, you know, whatever party, the other party, you know, team is you're on. And I think part of it has to do with, in the past, we all generally kind of wanted similar things, and at least maybe we just disagreed on how to get there. But in today's world, it seems like each party or each tribe ascribes the most negative thoughts about the other one. Like, if you're a Democrat, you believe, like, oh, anybody who supports Trump got to be racist, got to be xenophobe, got to be kind of cult thinking. And then if you flip it around, oh, if you're a Democrat, you got to be pro Antifa, pro, you know, just communism and no private property or whatever. And it's hard to get past it, partly because political leaders don't really, they actually kind of sometimes encourage this and they benefit from it. How can an organization like Purple Bridges overcome what in some ways political leaders and media corporations benefit from? I mean, they love to kind of rile people up. It gets people engaged and it gets them to watch the content.
I agree completely with what you're saying. And I think that's the foundation of what we've been talking about, is that we really believe that when you sit down and you really talk to people, and more important than talking is actually listening, that we want to create a space that is nonpartisan, that and we have very clear rules of engagement. We want people to engage, but we want people to engage it with, and we will fight fiercely to engage with civility and truth and unity. And once you actually talk about what you believe, we're not going to agree on everything. And truthfully, we're not trying to change anybody's beliefs. My values came to me over these many years, your values came to you. What we just want to do is create a space where people can believe in their country over their party, and in that space engage in dialogue that will find even the narrowest of common ground, like this little tiny strip of land that we can build a bridge on. And then once we can build that bridge and find out where our connection points are, we can build on that. And the more of us that are doing that, the more of us that are tired of this contentious world that we've created, and you said it, it seems to be that that's in some ways where our politicians and our media and everybody else may be driving toward. But we want to be a different kind of space for people. And once we do that, we really believe that with numbers, we can hold our leadership accountable for being actual leaders, for finding compromise and building a more united America. And Katy's been working very hard on our social media platforms, and we're, like I said, we're just at the very beginning of all of this, but it's something really special, and we're inviting people into our space and our rooms to have those conversations. And Katy can talk to you a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So before breaking it down into what Purple Bridges is going to do and how we're going to utilize social media, I think we need to break down the problem statement and what we're solving for. So the problem is America's new, like, socially distanced reality has warped the landscape of the 2020 election and political discourse as we know it. And, tensions has been rising for a couple of years now in anticipation of this election. And social media usage is at an all-time high. I do have a couple of stats to kind of depict how large of a scale that is.
Oh, well, we love stats here.
So you all know, there are 2.3 billion active Facebook users as of quarter three in 2018, the last time we've measured it. There are 500 million tweets a day sent out. And that means there's 6,000 tweets a second. 68% of overall US adults are on Facebook, and 51% of them are active users and check in on their phones several times a day. So that means there is a large portion of our population very, very intertwined with social media. That's where they're receiving their news. That's where they're talking to members of their own community. This is really important to consider in how we're going to solve the problem of breaking this political discourse. We need to reach them at where they're at. There are more humans online at any point now than any point in human history. This could actually mean a nightmare for democracy. So breaking that down, there are two main problems with what's going on online and how people engage online. So the first thing is the internet has gotten flooded since 2016 with bad information. And the divisive behaviors we're seeing online are being pushed by bots. Researchers have literally proven that nearly half of the accounts tweeting about the coronavirus since January are bots. That is, I think, 200 million tweets discussing the coronavirus, and 50% of those are bots pushing "don't wear a mask," all this rhetoric that is stirring up the emotions that are causing the left and the right to argue on matters of contention. And The second problem is extremist ideology online is further radicalizing the far left and the far right. It's not just the far right, as some of the narratives appears to be. It is both sides. There is a chasm of difference of reality of American views and the public's perception of American views. This socio-cultural friction and tension is created by reality not meeting their expectations. And to give an example that is an easy example to talk through, abortion is probably the clearest and most controversial example of this. In reality, the distribution of views on this topic is very, very wide, but you don't see that online. It's very, very partisan, very, very tribal. And so these are the problems that we are dealing with online that are the driving forces of this contention we're seeing. Social media is pushing narratives, real or not, and they can achieve notoriety by touching the minds of hundreds of millions of people. Just think about the scale of that and the severity of what the impacts of that are. And social media is arguably destroying our democracy. The fundamental concept of democracy is one person, one vote. And it's based on the assumption that each vote is more or less independent. And that person makes up his or her own mind on a personal choice. And so that is no longer happening in the way our online environments are driving our news consumption and the way we interact with each other. So I wanted to hear both of your thoughts on that, because I did want to bring a couple of actual facts to the conversation before opening up of why this problem is solvable and what Purple Bridges can do. I'm sure Tom and all the viewers are seeing this right now with RGB's death this week. We have new emotions even heightened right now. And it is an incredible time to be alive to see this happening right now, where it's history in the making online.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us would agree that if you just look at the last even few months, whether it's things that shouldn't be that controversial, but suddenly become these lightning rods, like, should you wear a mask in a crowded indoor place, at least? That's somehow controversial. Or, should we have a consistent pattern of how we nominate Supreme Court justices? Like, that's super controversial. On and on. Climate change, all these things. So I completely buy the argument that we have become more polarized, and social media probably has exacerbated that. And then you throw in, there are perhaps entities that want to create more division. So I buy that there's a problem. I'm curious how we solve it. So eager to hear more.
Yeah, so the problem is solvable, but you have to start small, which is what we're doing at Purple Bridges. We're putting an organization together that knows this is the problem, and we're going to put together what we can to start engaging to try to change what we see online and to create a solution. So I'm sure your followers are also familiar with the fact that we're seeing more and more politicians engage and integrate themselves into social media. So that means our leaders with the voice are engaging with us on social media. In 2016, Bernie create the, Feel the Burn movement across the whole internet, leading up to 2020, where we've seen the Reddit rally to support Trump and what we've known to grow into the meme movement. Obama's re-election campaign was credited as the first campaign to use Facebook to measurably impact the direction of election in 2012. So our politicians are engaging with us online. We're receiving our news online. We can facilitate conversations online, although there is a lot of this bad stuff going on. So the solution is to guide conversation that seems to be going in the wrong direction, in the right direction, engage with those people and bring them in to a community where they can safely talk about their ideas. It's also to bring them into the sphere of healthy debate and factual information spreading. We've kind of lost track of that. If we can manage to extract them or meet them at where they're talking online, we can bring them into an environment that supports common goals with advocacy and extending our understanding through informed and level-headed discussion, connecting with compassion, which will ultimately bridge the divide. So Purple Bridges, we're going to use Twitter, YouTube, Facebook to interact with the public and invite them into our community Our community is going to be organized in Slack and working groups for those who are interested. We are going to host webinars and invite experts into the conversation to set the debate stage. We are going to promote a positive online message to bridge the divide through our branding and our messaging, through all of our engagements. And most importantly, which Sheri can speak to this, we are going to invite our volunteers to come in with the freedom to be creative and contribute the way they want. We want the volunteers to be our live streamers and our social media advocates. We very much see this as a movement, and all of us are going to create together. We're trying to spread the meaning of Purple Bridges large and wide. So Sheri, if you want to get into that a little bit more.
Yeah, so the vision is to have the people in charge of the messaging in a lot of ways, because we're not trying to advance our own personal agendas as much as we're trying to get people of diverse backgrounds to communicate. And Katy's helping us to create the space in which those communications will happen. We also have a broadcast team that's going to be able to help put messaging out there. Also, I ultimately, my background also is in education. And I think that if we can create a space that has the credibility of balancing the education, there are a lot of places that people don't trust anymore. And whether that is right or not, I'm not going to speak to. I think there are a lot of trustworthy news and other organizations out there. But if we can keep our credibility about being a balanced place to find your education and to research and to understand the issues, then at least we have a place where people will not say, well, I'm not going to listen to that, or I am only going to listen to this because it reinforces the messages that I already have. But with a balanced education, with speakers from different perspectives, and then also staying in tune and in touch with the issues that are being brought up, that we can then put forward and ask our membership, ask the people who are involved in Purple Bridges what their perspective is, and then put them in a place where they can have meaningful dialogue with our rules of engagement. With, like you said, we will not vilify each other. We're not going to do that. We are really have one mission and one mission only, and that is to find a compromise, find that purple ground that we can then build upon. And once we can advance the ideals that the people want and find that middle ground, then we can put those ideals out there and say, these are the things that America really agrees on and can move forward on.
Can you share a little bit, Sheri, about the some potential rules of engagement you're thinking about?
I'd be happy to. I actually have them here. So, we want people to actually sign a document at some point, because we are absolutely committed to these rules of engagement. And the truth is, I want to say this up front. None of us have any great moral high ground to stand on, I don't believe. I think we're all going to make a mistake. We're all going to say things that come out from a passionate and opinionated perspective. But if we know that the goal is always to find that common ground and to advance unity for our country, then I think we can rein ourselves back in a little bit. And I'm humbled throughout life. Life has taught me to manage my own feelings and emotions about these things. And I hope that we create a place where people can do that as well. But we want to, there's different categories. So when you approach a conversation, we want to make sure that we have researched or and we have researched the topics at hand. We can assume good intent. This is one of the things that I think most people walking into a conversation, they hear you're from the other side and they assume, they make certain stereotypic assumptions about the other side. But if you assume from the get-go that the other person is well-intended, and then you find out where they're coming from, that's the first step. Commit to being fully focused to the conversation instead of a lot of times we're listening with the intent to interrupt and tell the person why they're wrong. But if you're fully engaged in the conversation, we think that you'll learn a little bit. Think about what you want the other person to know and the best way to convey the information. Create and maintain a safe environment. This is an environment where people are able to speak with their heart, which may be not as politically correct, or maybe be not exactly what everybody wants to hear. But if they say it from their heart without malicious intent, we can build on that thought process and help everyone understand where everybody's coming from. Study the opposing point of view, be willing to learn. And, also this idea that a lot of us throughout our life, we build walls around ourselves to protect ourselves from opposing points of view or the vulnerability that we feel as humans. But in this environment, if we're really going to be better, all of us, I know that I've had to be more vulnerable. I've had to be able to say that in spite of the fact that I feel incredibly passionate about my political perspective or point of view, that passion doesn't make me right. What it makes me is passionate. So when you're open to being vulnerable in that space and feeling the humility of uncertainty, I think you can be prepared to be amazed. We also have, like, during the discussion, things that we want to put into place and that we do with each other in our own team right now. Staying present, using facts as the basis of our discussion whenever possible, and allowing others to express their opinions and share their experiences. A lot of times people share experiences and we haven't walked in their shoes. So when they express those experiences, we have an opinion about those experiences, but we have to recognize that we haven't experienced it. We haven't walked in their shoes. So the more we can listen and the more we can learn from them, the more we are closer to being empathetic about the shoes that they're walking in. Again, truth, truth, truth. Strive for truth. Be empathetic. Avoid labeling, characterizing groups. You said this earlier. Don't label people based on their politics, their people, their gender, any of those things, any of the things that they come to the table with, and engage in the least personal version of the argument. It's not about us. So if we can have a conversation and recognize that it's about a greater good instead of something that is personal to us, then I think we can find some common ground. And there's lots more on here, but those are the big ones. Remembering that this is not a contest to see who wins. If we all don't win, America loses. So we have to all win. It has to be a win-win. And right now, it appears that where we are today, somebody has to lose and somebody has to win. And that's not what America is built on. That's not what we believe in. We believe that we can come to a win-win situation for all with respectful dialogue.
We can update some of these rules too and put it on our website, by the way. We just went over a lot, and you can get started in our community by just reading those rules that we kind of outlined, the rules of engagement, and take that into your personal life. But go ahead, Tom. I just want to put that out there that we can make those resources available to anyone watching right now or after this is recorded.
Yeah. And where can they go to find the rules as well as more info about Purple Bridges?
So sign up with us at purplebridges.org. If you give us your email, you'll be on our email subscription, and we immediately have a welcome email for you that will connect you to our community and let you know where all our social media links are living. So that's the first step to engage with us, is follow our social medias and get in on that welcome letter by giving us your email. And if you know that you want to already engage with us in the manner of volunteering, we have a separate form where you can tell us what your skill sets are, how you feel you can contribute, leave us a message and drop that through a form on our website as well. And we can engage with you and make you part of the volunteer side of the team.
And what's going to happen is we're working actually on a volunteer onboarding procedure. And we're going to invite all of our new volunteers. We're going to be doing monthly webinars to introduce people to know more about us and about our vision and about what we're doing in the future and how they can get involved. So that'll be the first kind of messaging that people can get involved with. We need people from, we need researchers, we need marketing people, we need social media and technical people, we need broadcast people, we need administrative support. If there's any social psychologists out there, we would love to talk to you, but we also need survey makers and statisticians. And so anybody who wants to become part of this, we're scaling it as we grow because we're brand new, but this is a vision that is very large. And the more people are engaged with us, the more we can use the statistics and the surveys and the knowledge that we gain from all of you. We know your viewers are passionate about this subject. We know because they were Yang gangers, and we know that we hope that they will see that we have value to continue their message and their passion into the future, regardless of who's president.
I think this, I love the idea. I love the principles. I feel like this is how ideally citizens should interact and engage with each other. I would love to see this in action because I've observed enough, Twitter quote unquote discussions where it just devolves into like snarky kind of ad hominem attacks. And I'm curious, will you be able to enforce the rules of engagement? And then B, what you're describing is a very thoughtful, contemplative, collaborative way of engaging, but it also requires more work. It's not as fun. It's much more fun to tell someone, "Oh, you're just a commie," or "You're a flag burner," or whatever the opposite is for the MAGA people. But and what you're talking about is, they have to actually like read facts and get data and work through logical arguments and find inconsistencies and identify assumptions. I mean, that's not fun. I'd rather a lot of people just want to put an animated GIF of like, Donald Trump on a toilet or something.
Right. Well, we're going to hopefully, as we grow and we get more support, we're going to try to make that easier for people. We have people who are passionate about research, and we'll be helping people curate some of that information. Right now, it's daunting for any one of us to go out there and actually find truth. It's you'll read something and then you'll say, "Oh my gosh, well, now I have to research how much of what I just read is fact." So we want to be that space where we can curate information that and build the credibility that people know you're going to get a balanced conversation. You're going to get balanced reading materials. You're going to get an opportunity to come here and see all sides of the story before you make a decision. Because you're right. At this point, most people are too busy or too disengaged, or just they're fed up. And as we grow, we certainly hope that we become that space. And, if somebody gets snarky, just say, thank you, we're working on purple instead.
Yeah, I want to bring something up, Tom, that you mentioned too. I think the key to this also is building and preserving community. I think if you can manage to figure out how to do that correctly, you might have better results later on in the way members interact with each other and others online. So I wanted to get your perspective, Tom, because I know you've been very, very active yourself. You're putting yourself together, a nonprofit yourself. You're doing your podcasts in a world that's no longer led by Andrew Yang. You're Nerds for Humanity now. So what does that look like when you branch out of the Yang Gang into the wild to harness that community and build it and preserve it? And I really think that's the key to doing that, to doing what we both want to do. But that is a very, very hard problem to solve. And I haven't seen anyone who's been able to solve that problem. So what tactics or strategies can we both use to help our orgs hopefully achieve and build the right way?
It's a great question. And I wish I had the silver bullet. I mean, one of the things I struggle with is even as an example, with my own family, where I have a number of, Trump supporters in my family. And, we'll have a discussion about something like, mask wearing. And I'll say, hey, I did a video about this where I looked at like what the scientists are saying and the specialists are saying. And they'll say, thanks. And I know they won't watch the video. I know they won't spend time looking at the citations. And I think part of it is, it's just a lot of work to get to the truth. And also the truth is usually nuanced and not nearly as fun and as exciting as, a bumper sticker. And so I think I agree with you, Katy, that to the extent that you can create a community where there's like common assumptions about and principles about how to engage with each other and what we're all trying to achieve. And there's also maybe an understanding of consequences of not abiding by these agreed upon principles or rules of engagement. Maybe then you could actually start to see a little bit more traction. But I do feel like we're running into some headwinds where, there is like human nature that, long before social media, there was that thing they used to say in print, like if it bleeds, it leads. Like people want very kind of sensational stuff, and they don't want to read like a 30-page long form investigative journalism article. They don't want to read the actual bill or legislation. They don't want to read like a NASA climate change study. They'd rather just say, fires have always been around, whatever. It's so much, and you're just being you're overreacting, bleeding heart flag burner. And so I think that is the struggle with what you're describing, and what I think a lot of us would love to see is how do we get people to decide that it's worth the effort to get to the truth. And the kind of value proposition is a little bit hard because you're actually not going to get that instant gratification that you do by just following, the people that you agree with and retweeting them.
Yeah, I think that
you keep going. You go, Sheri.
I want to speak to a couple of things. One is what Katy said, and also Tom, what you said. First of all, I think that this is kind of the right moment in time for us because of the lack of community that we've had during this pandemic. I think you can join this community with like-minded people. We're not asking you to join a community that doesn't think like you. We believe that you can bring along your friends and your like community as long as you are willing to be open-minded and hear. And to speak to what you said, these communities are going to be built over time. It's not going to be a light switch. We know that it's taken quite a bit of time for us to get to where we are today. If we, can Monday morning quarterback, we can look back and say, oh yeah, here are the milestones that we could look at that got us from where we were to where we are today. And I think we're going to do that in the future as well. We're going to be able to look back at this moment and say, okay, we woke up and here's where we are. And what are the milestones that we're going to set our targets on? What are the guideposts? So we're going to take us in the next year to here, and then in the next year to here. But at some point, maybe, just maybe, I'm somebody who likes to imagine the unimaginable. And the unimaginable right now is that we all recognize for a time for the future, we recognize that we are all humans on this planet, created equal, and we will work together. We have to work together if the humanity is going to continue. And so we're going to create milestones along the way. And people like you who are doing the same thing, and your listeners, if we can just keep our eyes on the goal and get to one goal, I'm a little bit sort of a runner. And so I always say I'm exhausted, but if I can just make it to that stop sign, I'll be okay. And then when I get to that stop sign, I say, okay, there's a road in a quarter of a mile. I can make it to the road. And so it might take us a little while, but I really feel like with all of us here recognizing our broken society and wanting passionately to fix it, to create a more united America, we've just got to look at the stop sign or the next road that we're going to take and just rush at it. Those are my thoughts.
I want to make one more point. So taking the themes that we're talking about and making them a reality in the form of a business plan that grows is another thing in itself. So I wanted to ask you, if we have time, Tom, like one last thing. I think we need to take our analytics more seriously. On the campaign, I was part of groups that dove into that lightly. What we would do is we would see how many people put, the blue hat in their profile. Like that would show us like who's an Andrew Yang supporter. We would measure the tweet engagement of like what time of day you tweeted out. Maybe we should get into those analytics deeper and A/B testing different messaging to see what resonates better, to figure out what channels are driving the most traffic. Tom, I don't know what your live analytics are for your live podcast, but really looking at this and measuring it and ensuring that we're going in the right path to growth is something I think we need to look at very carefully and measure very carefully to know how to grow. And so I would hope, this is what I'm hoping, that people who are tuning in right now, I really want the Yang Gang and outside of Yang Gang to have an open source environment. This is very much a group effort, especially if Yang Gang wants to stay a group after post Yang dropping out. We need to figure out how to preserve our community and grow. So we need to figure out how to measure that and to measure our efforts basically that we're pushing out there into the world. So what are your thoughts, Tom, on analytics? Or maybe you could talk us through some of yours or your experiences with those sort of things.
Yeah, I think, and Sheri probably can relate to a lot of this from, decades in the corporate world. But if you don't measure success, then you can't manage for it. And I think a lot of us who get involved in these volunteer efforts, we get really fired up about the problem, about an idea on how to solve it. And a lot of energy goes into that. but maybe we don't spend as much time saying, hey, like 3 months from now, what 3 numbers are we going to look at to know that we're on the right track? And incredibly, I think I see this in my day job where you spend more time arguing over what's the definition of success than sometimes the time you need to execute. Because if you get that first part right, then the execution kind of like is 100 times easier. And so, for the stuff that I'm working on, like of the people, I think the things that we're looking at are 3 months from now, like how many candidate profiles do we have? How many?
We cut out. Paused.
Oh,
you were frozen there for a moment.
You were frozen.
For my project of the people, we're looking at 3 metrics. How many candidate profiles do we have? How many voter profiles do we have? And how many donors do we have? And if we're building something that isn't driving a lot of candidate interest and engagement and isn't attracting a lot of voter interest and engagement and isn't getting donor support, then we're doing something wrong. And I think the thing is, like, it's important to have those numbers in your mind before you do the project, because otherwise you'll always be able to convince yourself that, oh, hey, it's looking good. We got more candidates than we did last week, but maybe really you should have had 10 and now you had 2 and you're saying that you doubled because you went from 1 to 2. Like, human nature, like nobody wants to kind of talk down on their progress, and it's natural to want to see the silver lining. But I also think it's important to hold ourselves accountable because we are using volunteer time, we are using donor dollars, and we want to make sure that we're really landing impact. And I would imagine for Purple Bridges, something similar where you have like number of active users or number of active conversations or number of active volunteers, and coming up with some milestones up front would be super helpful.
Yes, you are right on. And with any corporation, you have to do that legwork before you know where you're going. You have to have, besides the mission and vision, you have to have a strategic plan, and you have to understand where that strategic plan is leading you so that, to your point, you can measure against it. I would love to ask your viewers a couple of questions just based on this conversation, but it's really the kind of thing that we would want to do on a regular basis for Purple Bridges. Anybody who's on our mailing list would get a sort of a tickler question that we could begin a dialogue about. But just as a beginning, because again, we're just starting out, and I love your insights, and I hope that we can continue to have dialogue together about this because we seem to be very aligned in our missions. But I would love to ask your listeners, like, does this sound exciting to them? And, I'd love to hear their thoughts about it. And if they could create one tangible thing that would solve the problem of our current divide, what would that be? Like, out of your brain, if you could come up with one tangible thing that would solve the current divide in our politics, what would you recommend? And then lastly, I would love to know if they are interested in our mission. We're a small and mighty team, but what skills and abilities, what knowledge do they bring from being on the Yang team, and what they know things and can bring something to the table to help us grow this business and to be part of the creative solutions and creation of Purple Bridges?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I would encourage people who are watching this on replay to put it in the comments so that we can go back and check the comments. And if you're in the live stream right now, feel free to put them in the chat and I can highlight some. And while we're waiting for that, I would give you my proposal for one thing I would love to see Purple Bridges take on. I interviewed this woman, Catherine Gale, who wrote a book called The Politics Industry with Michael Porter. And, it's basically saying, hey, the way we do primaries is basically creating incentives for the two sides never to work with each other, because if you do a bipartisan deal, you get primaried. And the primary winner is usually the most kind of extreme for each party. And so, her proposal is something along the lines of open primaries using ranked choice voting for the top 5, irrespective of party membership. And then you would end up creating incentives to appeal to a broader range of people and not just to the ends of each spectrum. So if the Purple Bridges movement wanted to foster a conversation about, well, is that really a good idea? Why? And what should we do about it if it is, or how could we tweak it to make a better idea? Like, that would be super cool, because I think that is one of those things that appeals to both parties. It's like, I think we all realize, like, this is not working. And the people that are put in office, I almost can't blame them, because I feel like they're doing what the system is rewarding them for. Right. And they want to, they care about self-preservation, and doing a purple deal is the fastest way to lose your party's nomination.
It's funny. I actually watched your podcast with her, and it got my mind going as well, because I think there are pros and cons that need to be. We need to dive into those and find out really, on the scale of the pros and cons, does it make sense? Because it's a pretty radical idea, right, for our country. But I would love to take that on. So we will reconvene with the team and figure out how we do that, because I think it's a really good nonpartisan question to throw out and figure out. But we've got to get the experts on both sides to be able to have the really good dialogue about what makes it, what are the values and what are the potential potholes that we might find.
I think it would be a really cool conversation. And if there were a forum or a Slack room or somewhere where this was being discussed, where we had really well-informed people from all perspectives, and we could really dig into the details and work on it together like a team, I think that'd be super cool. And I'd love to, at a minimum, be an active reader, if not a participant in the conversation.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Thank
well,
you. Our first challenge.
Yes. I'm running late. I was supposed to start a stream with old Scott Santons about basic income at 11 Pacific. So we're running a little behind. I do want to give you both a minute or so to share any final thoughts or call to actions, or you want to emphasize any key points that we hit or that we missed. Now's a great time to do it. Katy, do you want to wrap it up for us, and then we'll go to Sheri?
Sure. I'm assuming most of the live viewers particularly are Yang Gang. I just want to call on the Yang Gang to see if you are interested in joining forces with us. And even if you're just slightly interested, you can go to our website and subscribe to us and get some information and then decide. Or if you want to volunteer right now, you can literally just DM me on Twitter and I will respond. You can send us messages on any of our platforms and we will bring you into our volunteer community that we're building. So that's the main call to action I want to open up to the Yang Gang. That's my final statement there, is because we are at the very early stages of building something and we need support. And if you don't have time, that's fine. You can donate to us. If you believe in us and have the resources to donate to us, we have production costs that are going to come down the pipeline. So there are 2 ways to help. If you can't volunteer, you can donate. So all of that is find on our website.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Katy. Sheri, what are any closing thoughts from you?
Well, just that we are looking for a really, really diverse team. And one of the challenges that we faced in the very early days is how to bring people onto the team that had different points of view than us. So I would just say, if you are very passionate about one way of thinking, I would engage. I would love to see you personally, each one of us, engage with people who don't think like us and bring them together lockstep with you onto our team so that you can have that dialogue in a safe space. It's not about advancing one agenda or another. It's about really listening to everybody. So I encourage everyone to go out, find that person who thinks a little differently than you, and come and join us, because it's only through a balance of membership and volunteers and people engaged that we're going to really truly find a united America.
Right on. Thank you, Sheri. And I can't wait to see what you guys do and be part of the movement. I think what you're trying to do is something that most of the country wants, but we've never seen it done. So if you can pioneer and experiment with ways to kind of get the country together and agree on that slither of overlap, that would be fantastic. I can't wait for that. And so hopefully we can get you back on the show in the future to give us an update and hear about the latest.
Yes, and we'll have to talk to you more about our first challenge too.
I love it. With that, we're going to say goodbye, nerds.
Bye.
Goodbye, nerds.
Love it. See